Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marimba Malayans here. We're going to do a roll call. I want to also welcome co-chair Lavelle, who is unable to chair this meeting today, but will be able to participate. Just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, so please mute yourselves if you're not speaking. And then also, if you have a question, please just use the raise your hand function or raise hand function in the bottom right corner if you're on your computer screen. We ask that you turn your cameras on so that your name appears when you speak, but you can feel free to cover the camera on your device if you do not want to appear on screen. If you have not returned your conflict of interest form at this time, obviously you are not permitted to participate in any motions or votes today. So I just want to remind you all of those items, and per the guidelines, each member of the advisory board at the beginning of his or her term shall execute and acknowledge the reinvestment funds policy regarding conflicts of interest in the form attached as part of Exhibit B. With that, I would like to formally call the meeting to order so that we can begin. So the meeting is formally called to order effective at 12:06. All right, so let's jump right in. I'm going to ask Julia to do a roll call of the board members so that we can make sure that we have accurate details about who's here today and to determine if we have quorum. Julia?
Thank you, Marimba. Will the representative from District 6 please state if they're present?
Present.
Will the representative from the Hill CDC please state if they're present?
Present.
Will the representative from the Hill District Federal Credit Union please state if they are present?
Present.
Will the representative from the Hill District Consensus Group please state if they are present?
Present.
Will the representative from Wesley Center AME Zion Church please state if they are present?
Present.
Will the representative of Shenley Heights Community Development Program please state if they are present? Will the representative of the Historic Hill Institute please state if they are present?
Present.
Will the representative of the Office of the State Representative, Jake Wheatley, please state if they are present? Will the representative of the Office of the County Executive Fitzgerald please state if they are present? Will the representative of the Office of the Mayor please state if they are present? Will the representative of the Pittsburgh Public School District please state if they are present? Will the representative of Allegheny County Council please state if they are present? All right, welcome everyone.
With that, we're going to move with the approval of the minutes. As a reminder, because these meetings are being recorded and posted on the URA's website, the URA staff will no longer be taking detailed minutes of our meetings. The recordings will serve as the minutes of our meetings for this advisory board. URA staff will compile and share general notes from each meeting. The motion to approve the first meeting minutes on 10/12 has been tabled because the co-chairs have not had the opportunity to meet and discuss the submitted corrections with the advisory board member who had revisions, proposed revisions. So with that, let's jump into old business. The meeting schedule, the next meeting for old business, and first and foremost being the meeting schedule, the next meeting for our advisory board will be held the week of January 31st, 2022, with a target date and time of Thursday, February 3rd at 2 p.m. So please put a tentative hold on your calendars for that specific date if you have not already, so that we can be sure to keep our business moving. Do I have a motion to direct URA staff to schedule the next meeting of this board for the week of January 31st?
So moved. Richard
Thank you,
Witherspoon.
Richard. Is there a second?
Second, Reverend Grayson.
Thank you, Reverend Grayson. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
nay,
Is anyone abstaining? Okay, thank you. The URA will attempt to schedule the meeting. That motion passes for 2 meetings that are 3 weeks apart, which is what we previously agreed to. We didn't want to do monthly. We didn't want to do bi-weekly. So we agreed at least every 3 weeks to try to get together to really accelerate the progress of the advisory committee. And they will try to schedule the meeting on behalf of the committee. So let's jump into fund priorities and have a discussion about that. This has been the discussion we've had maybe for the last 3 meetings, trying to move forward on recommendations around allocation. So as discussed at our last meeting and at the direction of both myself and co-chair Lavelle, the URA staff shared a fund allocation Excel spreadsheet for board members to complete. As you will recall, that was sent originally from the Hill CDC after meeting with a broad range of community members who participated in thinking through and coming up with this allocation plan with a broad range of expertise, I should also say, ranging from people who have served as loan officers at banks to everyday citizens and community members. So that was discussed in pretty good detail. And this exercise was a way for members to share their opinions on what percentage of funding for each eligible category that's listed in the guidelines of our fund should receive and lead to a more robust, we like to receive, and hopefully that will lead to a more robust conversation today. The survey was sent to the advisory board members on December 23rd with a request for responses by December 31st. Unfortunately, we did not receive any responses from any board members by that date. URA staff did confer with myself and Councilman Lavelle about not getting a response by the 31st. The 4th meeting was postponed until today to give board members additional time to complete those surveys, and a request for surveys to be submitted to URA staff was sent on Wednesday, January 5th, with a request for responses to be sent by Friday, January 7th, so that they could create and share a presentation with the advisory board prior to this meeting that we're having now, which was requested by us. So a second extension was granted until January 11th with a request for the allocation sheet and for feedback on, what's going on. Are there, why we haven't received the feedback. And then one additional response was sent since that time. So the URA received a handful of responses from board members, which I will summarize now. One board member agreed with the fund allocation created by Hill CDC, which is what we shared and discussed at the last board meeting, but had concerns about the difficulties of managing a loan portfolio. One member disagreed with the worksheet process and raised the question, who is the advisory board's customer? One member indicated that they needed additional time to review policies such as the CSIP, and one member created their own public survey unilaterally. We would like to get the board members' thoughts at this stage about where we stand on the fund allocations and really kind of walk through that. So with that said, let's open up discussion here, keeping in mind that our goal is to keep this meeting to 1 hour if possible. We know we're going to lose at least one board member at that time. Okay. Again, please use the raise hand function and we will go to RB.
okay, so the reason I did not agree with the fund allocation methodology is the Florida district contrasted with the city of Pittsburgh, that's the Hill district itself, has several issues. It's not a mature neighborhood. We have more, if you look at Google Earth, we have more vacant space, green tree tops, green lots than we do have rooftops. And for that reason, we don't have a mature neighborhood. So the approach that is used by the Housing Opportunity Fund of the city of Pittsburgh, which the URA administers, it's used for the citywide, and the city is a mature city. It doesn't have the vacant lots that we have. It doesn't have the property that's condemned or vacant. It hasn't lost 10,000 residents since the CSIP was incorporated in September of 2011. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. The Housing Opportunity Fund will get 10 million per year from 2018-19 when it was created. It has these city of Pittsburgh residents that are 80% AMI or less income as customers, and it's solely focused on facilitating housing. So it has a reoccurring revenue stream and only has one purpose and a limited scope in regards to who the customer is. So contrast that to the Hill. The Hill has 7.5 million supposed to be in deposited, and we have 7.1 million, whatever the rest of it is or where it is. And we have several categories, but we don't have a mature neighborhood. We have people in our neighborhood that have an average median income of $17,674. So they're certainly below 80% AMI, so they're in the category by the Housing Opportunity Fund. However, the Hill District Consensus Group has been looking into that and can't find many residents of the Hill that have been helped.
I'm sorry, can you clarify, what have you been looking into? Can you clarify what residents?
I'm clarifying. The clarification is that when we ask, do a survey, who's been helped by this Housing Opportunity Fund, we get very few people. A lot of people have inquired, and whether or not they were able to be helped by the fund is unknown.
Okay.
All right.
So do you have recommendations for our fund, RB, in terms of allocations?
Can you not interrupt me, please?
I just want to make sure we don't run out of time. We just want to
We're not going to run out of time, but this is important business.
Okay.
And to try to rush this through is a disservice to the residents of the Hill District.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm going as fast as I'm going to go. When you are pontificating and providing supposition, nobody interrupts you.
RB,
So,
can we get to the allocations, please?
All right, listen, please. All right, you want to waste time by continuing to interrupt me? So here's the point. The point is that Hill District has 6 census tracts. Census tract 305, the boundary was moved, so it's not going to be able to qualify for community development block grant money in a couple years. Census tract 506, which is the Upper Hill, currently does not qualify for community development block grant money. So what does all that mean? That means that the Hill District residents are at a significant disadvantage. We don't have the population. Yes, we want business. We don't have a bakery. We don't have a pharmacy. We don't have a dry cleaner. We don't have a place that we can sit down and meet each other. So there's a lot of needs. Housing is the primary need, but the Housing Opportunity Fund is for the entire residents of the city, and they basically can only help 500 residents. We have less than 10,000, 9,800. We have many people in need. The money that we have in this fund needs to go towards creating housing opportunity and job opportunity, because Black business does not survive without Black residents. You need the foot traffic. We don't have that now, and we don't have a neighborhood which would be enticing people to come to it from other parts of the city, which already have mature. So when you look at Lawrenceville and you look at Penn Avenue, where you have Garfield on the north and you have Friendship on the south, they have rooftops when you look at Google Earth. We don't. So for that reason, we need to prioritize things. We have one deposit, one only. So the methodology that the Housing Opportunity Fund is using doesn't work for the Hill District because we have many priorities. And by the way, this CDC, Hill CDC eligible uses is not in compliance with the CSIP, page 23. So we have a lot of things to discuss, and we need to have metrics. We need to have a plan. So you do the vacant buildings and you get people to work renovating the vacant buildings and then sell them, use that money to capitalize the credit union, and then we can fund small business. But we have one deposit, just one, not 10 of 10 million, not 100 million. We got 7.5 million. So we have to work together and come up with a plan that will satisfy the top priority for the Hill District. If we want the Hill District to remain a predominantly Black neighborhood, it has a lot of history, then we have to attract residents to the Hill before we can put businesses along Center Avenue. So that's why I don't believe that this allocation methodology is prudent. It's not prudent for what we need to do for the Hill. We need to reinvest in the Hill and the people of the Hill first and foremost, and then we can do the other things that everybody seems to be in such a rush to do.
Thank you, RB. Are there any additional comments on the allocation?
Oops. Yeah.
Kimberly?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. I am the person who sent in the straw poll requesting that Hill residents would fill out the form that matches this exact form. I used all of the categories that were here. And I'm just wondering, Marimba, did you send out the straw poll to anybody, to the Hill CDC list or anything?
No, we have not sent out anything. I don't know if anyone else has. Have any other board members sent out the poll?
Yes, I sent out the poll.
Okay.
This is Arby.
That you, Arby?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I want to recommend, because I agree with everything that Arby said that I'm in understanding of. Some of it I didn't, I wasn't aware of, but I agree just in general, because even though I as I said in the last meeting, I've watched developments come in and out of downtown. And it's so interesting because as they're trying to build up housing, as new buildings go up and new apartments go up, they are still not able to sustain certain businesses, right there. And so I've just been really paying attention just to how they come and go. It's a different situation, obviously, than the historic Hill District. But the bottom line is you have to have people who are living in the neighborhood who will use these resources and support these Black businesses and support these developments like every day, or, every other day or something like that. So it's important. The housing is at the top of the list. And so let me back up also and say that, first of all, we've had roughly 4 community meetings since the LRTA was kind of like released, and like announced that like it's in operation. 2 of them were held by our co-chair, Marimba Malliance, virtually, and 2 of them were held by Tyann Battle and like just Hill citizens, but they featured Daniel Lavelle, the other co-chair. So we've actually had 4 meetings of two different groups of people that we have not yet engaged with this form, with this ask of priorities. And when I thought about that, that's why I developed the straw poll. And in respect to the form itself, right, and the work that was already put in, that's why I duplicated these categories. So I want to recommend that the straw poll be sent out by Daniel Lavelle, by Marimba Malayans, by all of the entities that are on this call, because we need to get more Hill residents caring and sharing about what they want. But so far, we have 40 people who have responded, and their responses do not match up with these eligible uses that were produced by the Hill CDC and their experts. And I would also like to know.
These Kimberly, let me just clarify. These eligible uses were not created by the Hill CDC. These eligible uses are outlined in the CSIP and the process.
I get that.
Okay, I just want to be sure that we're clear about that.
Yeah.
And RB's comment about the historic hill preservation was something that came up in the process from community members, specifically the churches. And that is why that was added at the time. So I just want to be clear about where the information came from, and Councilman Lavelle can speak directly to the other off the record meeting that was held. So I'll let him speak to that once you're finished. Thank you.
Okay, no, I get that. My point is about the group that you said gathered that shared their input, and the experts that you said, the fund managers, loan managers. I would like to know who those people are. I would like to know when the meeting happened. But more importantly, it's just important for us to engage Hill residents. Like, I totally agree with RB that it does seem like this process is being rushed in a way that will be detrimental for all of us, because all of our names are involved here, all of our processes and our concerns are involved here. And even I have said, listen, we need to go back and revise these guidelines. This is my third or fourth request. I'm making the request again to do that. But relative to this straw poll, it's really important to ask Hill residents what they want and what they think are a priority, and match it up with what the experts know. And the experts know that if you don't have foot traffic, you don't have a business, you don't have anything. So housing and bringing people here is of primary concern. So I just want to reiterate that 40 people so far have responded to the poll, and housing is at the top of their list. We already said that we're not going to duplicate what people's needs are, but there seems to be a gap between what the URA offers and what people are actually able to achieve. So case in point, I mean, this is sort of embarrassing to say, but when I put this poll on my Facebook page, the first person to respond, and in all caps, was Brenda Tate. And Brenda Tate, she's a former board member of the Hill CDC. She's a retired police officer. She's an absolute wonderful servant of the Hill District. And she's in her 70s, and she's struggling to get assistance for her property. She is like priority number one. And I have such a major issue with the fact that she didn't qualify for some things of the URA and things like that. We just have to do a better job. And that's what I'm saying. So I like, anyway, the next priority was children and youth initiatives. The next priority was workforce development initiatives and job placement. Then MWBE, business counseling and project development. And I also put in the grants versus the loan, because I thought that was really important for people to know. And this is still how they voted. And so buildings development, the built environment, got 9.8%, whereas housing and stuff like that got 16.67%. So these are important. Historic Hill institutional preservation, churches and historic sites, even that got 8.64%. So my recommendation is that we continue to put out this poll, especially because I did it in respect to this form exactly. And let's get some more votes out, and let's actually share the LERTA and where we are, like, with the community at our next community meetings, plural, because we know we have different types of community meetings here in the Hill District, which I'm fine with. But so let's do that. Let's all continue to work together and come up with like a really a foolproof plan to make sure that our community can actually thrive and that we can make the best use of this funds. And so the recommendation, which I've said previously in many different meetings, is that we need a fund manager who can help us to elongate these funds so that it doesn't just all go out the door without us being able to monopolize on the $7.3 million, $2 million. Thank you so much.
Kim, were the questions that you put out, were they for grants? Because if they are grants, we know that those won't be coming back in any form. So can you speak to whether or not the feedback you received was for grants or whether it was for loans?
No, I used this exact form, and wherever there were grants, I put grants, and wherever there were loans, I put loans. So
So you mean these exact categories?
Yeah, in every single category, yes.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that any of these stipulates loans or.
Yeah, no, buildings development says the built environment, loans that must be repaid. Wealth building activities, loans that must be repaid. I may have run out of space, but yeah.
Okay.
So even
Got
NWBE development, it says loans that must be repaid. I was
Yes,
just trying to respect the process that you all had already set up.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Kim. Are there any other additional comments from board members?
Oh, I'm sorry. And one last thing is that I did receive a call from Mark Clayton Southers, and that it was interesting because I know that he filled out this poll, and he called me because he was asking about it. And he, interestingly enough, thought about the children and youth education initiatives because you all know that he runs Pittsburgh Playwrights Theater. So it's just another stakeholder. I'm just bringing this up because these are the people that actually contacted me and wanted to talk through it. And I'd never actually considered talking to more. I didn't call anybody. And so he called me and he talked about his project. And this is why we want to have, feedback and full engagement with Hill residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any additional comments?
Remember, can I chime in for a quick second?
Sure.
One, I agree. More engagement is always better, but I do think it's important to note that even getting to these categories is built on probably about 4 years or more of engagement with the community. So these sort of categories don't just come out of nowhere, right? And I would argue the engagement began when we were sort of meeting with the Pittsburgh Penguins around the CSIP and holding monthly at times meetings where we would say, are we getting this right? Is this what the community needs? Is this what you all are caring about? And sometimes they would say, no, you actually have it a little wrong. We'd rather prioritize this, go back and argue with the Penguins about this, go fight for this. And then that engagement continued in meetings where this list was even more refined. And so in my opinion, what we're doing now is saying, based upon the last 4 to 6 years of community engagement, here's how we need to begin moving forward. And so I'm fine with sharing the poll. I know it was shared on my page. I know some people responded to it. So I'm fine with continuing to engage. I guess what I'm trying to emphasize to this group, it's not about new engagement, but rather this is just a continual effort that's been years in the making. With that being said, and even towards the meeting that Dr. Ellis referenced that both myself and Diamante attended, what I heard coming out of that meeting more than anything else was, well, when are you all going to begin moving, right? So we understand what you fought for. We understand the context and the background. Now that resources, are here, when will you all begin to move? And so what I want to stress is that this committee, to the greatest extent possible, continue to engage, but also continue to move this process forward. With that being said, what I heard from Arby, as what I heard from Dr. Ellis, was priority number one, based upon their opinion and the feedback they received, is actually housing in some form or fashion. And so when I look at this list, that gets lumped into rent assistance, potentially project development, development initiatives, as are all related to actual housing development. And so even when you look at this list, that's not inconsistent with what you all are hearing. And so that's just sort of my observation and my thought. The other thought that I do have is we do need to decide what percentage we want to be loans versus what percentage we want to be grants. And I'm not necessarily sure how that decision gets made, but it is one of the issues that we must sort of tackle.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional comments? Let me just first say, let me first say that and then we'll come to you, RB. So agreed, Councilman, and I think that a part of that's going to be a math problem, figuring out what percentage should be grants versus loans based on how long we want the fund to last. And I think that the committee has to really think through, do we want to give out, say, 80% of grants in the form of rent or mortgage or something else, or do we want to do investments into long-term affordable housing projects, which, by the way, may be able to pay back some, but oftentimes require, considerable subsidy as well. And that's, again, that's the work of the committee. And these are the conversations we've had, for the past couple of meetings. And thank you for acknowledging the many, many years of work that went into even getting to this point. I think that it's really important for all of us to acknowledge we have different points of entry and exit from processes. And even though we may not have personally participated in a process or been engaged in that specific process, it does not mean that there was not a viable process. And so let's just be mindful that we can get into a cyclical pattern if we are always trying to accommodate someone's point of entry. RB, and then we can decide how we want to move forward.
Okay, so here's the thing. We need a plan, and we don't have a plan. Yes, we want to move forward. I want to move forward, but you got to have a plan. So to a couple of the things that have been said, yes, there was a lot of people involved, and that was 10 years ago, 2011. The Hill has changed significantly since then. So that has to be taken into consideration. You also have to take into consideration that for the first time, the Hill District has resources to help itself. Because when you look around, that hasn't been happening. So if you talk about vacant buildings and $50 to $100 per square foot, a new building is $300 per square foot plus. None of the residents that we have right now have the financial means to buy a new building. So there are ways to rehab a building and then sell it, and then you put those proceeds back into the fund. We need to reinvest in the fund as we move forward. People in the Hill can work on that want to, contractors that want to work on these buildings can work on these buildings that are vacant and so forth. Some of them are condemned, but they've got good brick structure and foundation. So there is a method, but the big picture, what I'm saying is that we need a plan. And yes, there was a lot of hard work that went into the CSIP. I recognize that. But at this point, that's 10 years ago. And we've lost 10,000 residents since then. And we are in danger of no longer becoming or remaining a Black neighborhood. So those things need to be understood. Is it a math problem? Not really. It's a do you want to problem. Do we want to sustain the Hill? Do we want to reinvigorate the Hill? I think everybody does. Now we need to come together and have a plan. The allocation methodology doesn't work because it doesn't prioritize. You're still going to try to do these other things. in regards to people that need grants, well, they need to come to us with an application. And I would say because the city has more money and the county has more money than our $7 million in our fund, that we say, okay, if you've been turned down or it's been so long that you are like at your end financially and you need help, so we're a last resort. We can't be the first stop because the money will go out the door, like Kim says, and it's never coming back. So a grant needs to be helping someone that can't get help elsewhere. So we got to put boundaries and understand how we're going to sustain this fund, because this is the first time that we can help ourselves. So we all need to work together, and we all need to come together with a plan, recognizing what has been done in the past and understanding where we are today and where we want to go. We've got to get residents on the Hill. We've got to create a desire to be on the Hill and have foot traffic so that these small businesses that we want to create will have the ability to be sustained. So let's work together. That's my message. Work together, come up with a plan. Who's the customer? Do we have a problem statement? And things of that nature. We need a plan. We don't have a plan. And this allocation worksheet works for the Housing Opportunity Fund. They're getting $10 million a year. Okay, we're not. We don't know when Block Echo, the Live Nation, will ever come to fruition. We don't know. That's the next possible deposit. So we need to make this money work for us, the residents of the Hill, by investing in housing, selling that housing, putting the money back in the fund.
Yeah. Can I?
Thank you, Irving.
Can I have a voice?
Just one point of clarification, and then we'll move to you, Richard.
Okay.
This allocation chart was not provided by the Housing Opportunity Fund, nor the URA. This allocation plan was developed through a community process with community members. Does not mean it should be adopted or not, but I just want to be clear that this does not come from the Housing Opportunity Fund, just to be sure everybody's clear. And it also is important to just recognize that the Hill District has in prior years put together funding for itself, which was held by the Poise Foundation in the Greater Hill Development Fund. Richard?
Okay, thank you, Marimba. I just want to voice my opinion on this, on the eligible uses, the chart that you've put out there. I think that the eligible uses is broad enough in terms of how it could be allocated to who could be allocated to suit the needs and address the needs of the community. It covers a lot of areas. I think the only place that we may need some tweaking may be in the percentages. You know, we don't want to have a large need and we're locked in to a certain percentage. Could you put that screen back? Could you? Yes. So for example, if we find that, you know, administration or MWBE development, if we need more, if things take off, we may have to reallocate along those lines. So, you know, the percentages it should stay liquid and fluid so that we can adjust as needed. But I'm in total agreement with the categories because they're so broad that they could cover a lot of areas in terms of granting. Now I can go to the next screen, would you? As far as lending is concerned, I have some concerns about that, in that we have public money that we're dispersing. And when you're dealing in public money, there are certain criteria that you have to adhere to keep from being exposed to lawsuits or not applying it unevenly to the residents and things like that. So to protect us from those exposures, we have to put certain processes in place to do it equitably. So, for example, when in order to stay in compliant, put a little thing here where we should try to address these 5 points: the truth and lending disclosures, promissory note, an internal committee for loan approvals, an ongoing loan servicing procedure, and a lending policy. Now, as far as this group is concerned, I haven't gotten the vibe that that we will be able to build that type of program if we decide that we need it. I don't know how we can address it, but I do know, for the sake of exposure, that we should have those types of mechanisms in place. Also, as far as managing the loan fund, I don't believe that the URA should manage a lending program. I think it should be done internally. How do we go about that is another story altogether. So if at all possible, my final point here is, if at all possible, the management of the fund should be the ones who control the loan fund. How do we go about it is something that we really, really have to address before we even consider loaning out any of this money. So your thoughts?
Thank you, Richard. Any comments,
This is Reverend Grayson.
Reverend?
Yeah. So I kind of heard what everyone was indicating and concur with in so many different levels. But I guess what Daniel said in terms of when we're going to kind of move this, and I know we don't want to just jump, but there's been a wait. And so maybe if we did some tweaking on the percentage or some tweaking on the use, but if we simply said, this is our model for year 1 and 2, and that we can then always go back and see what's working, what's not, as opposed to, we can spend another year doing straw polls and we can still do that. But I just think we have come to a point where said, let's begin somewhere, and it's an ongoing
Process, yeah.
process versus a whole. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, but I just think if we say, by, May 1, we want to be able to be in place to make some things happen for the next, 24 months. This is our model that still could be adjusted and tweaked as we go along. That it's not, that we're not married to it forever, but we're trying to assess throughout each experience what's working. And so at the same time, we are moving, but not stalemate, and that we can still make some things happen. And again, if not, we're just we can spend another year in the details. And so I'm not saying they're not important, but again, people are saying, when you're gonna make something happen, and that accountability is on us. And so I just want to get a happy balance.
Yes. So what do you think, Reverend Grayson? What do you think about, I totally agree with you along those lines, that we really should get off the dime. We really should start the process going. But as far as, I would still be concerned if we had a lending component to this, that there may be some exposure. Now, the granting piece, we have a lot of templates that we could use from foundations or even the URA, and to design something pretty quick that would open it up. But for the lending, that's a whole nother aspect to it all. Now, if we get started with granting now or in the short term, that's good. But then as we do that, we can determine how we want to build a lending program. But we shouldn't try to do a lending program right out of the gate without having an infrastructure in place.
And again, we could even, to some degree, put a cap on year 1 and 2 of how much we want to grant and work into. So if we say, this is our beginning, May 1, we should be ready to, receive our first applicants for a grant. We know that we don't want it to exceed, hypothetically, 2.5 million in year 1, 2, or whatever figure we decide, but at least we have a sense of movement, opportunity, and direction, and continued observation to see what's working, what's not, and that we can, as a board, we will stay at the table to continue to make sure we can do all our due diligence to make sure that the community is served from this opportunity.
And derive community support by with the movement.
Yes.
Yep.
So I see hands raised here from Kim and then RB, but I first want to ask the URA, would you all be able to model for us based on this allocation chart, because this is what we have right now, and if we want to change it, we should make some recommendations today, right now, because what I'm going to ask is for them to model what these percentages look like over a 1 to 2 year period, based on the categorical allocations. Do you understand what I mean? This is to the URA staff. So in other words, how much will we be giving out if we did like the 5% minimum, 15% minimum, 10%, so forth and so on?
Yes, we can work on that.
Okay, excellent. And then that way we actually have actual dollars that we know we are talking about. As of now, we have 7.87 that has been paid. I would like it to be modeled based off of that number as well as the 7.5, so that when BPG puts the balance of that $300,000 into the fund, we have both of those models offhand. But does that sound like a helpful and informational document? To me, it does. Is there any other information that someone would like to see in a model? And then I'm going to move to Kim and to RB.
Rima, may I ask a follow-up question for clarification here?
Sure.
Would you like us to define the funds equally between a number of years? So instead of it being 5% of the full 7.3, it would be 5% of, 1/5 or 1/7 of the fund?
Yes.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Kim, and then RB.
Yeah, so I also don't want to hold up the process. And I think that because we have the categories are the same, we're all fine with the categories. The only thing that is debatable are these percentages. Let's go ahead and announce to people that, like, if the URA is finished with the application, I think that we should announce that the applications are open, and we should announce it at the meetings and say that we're still sorting out things, but you should start getting your applications together and that they're open. And we'll determine, I mean, we're not going to spend $7 million, immediately. So I think that we can determine the percentages as well as, what is a grant or a loan. I think we can definitely determine that, with the list that we have as we continue to get feedback.
Thank you, Kim. RB?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is, because this is public money and we're actually a quasi-government board, you can't mute people because that's the First Amendment infringement. So you need to understand that. The second thing I will say is, I have a question for Mr. Witherspoon. So suppose we took vacant buildings in the Hill, got them renovated and sold them, and deposited the money in the credit union. Would that work? Would that allay some of the concerns? I understand what you're saying about loans, and understand what Reverend Grayson is saying, and Councilor Novell and Kim about moving forward. But I'm saying we need to be smart about it, and we need to have a recurring revenue stream until we understand if we're going to ever get another deposit. So my question to Witherspoon is, if we were able to take a vacant building and sell it after getting NWBE to work on the building and renovate it, and deposit those funds in your institution, would that work? Because what I'm looking at is, I understand about the loan, and we don't have that expertise, but you do. So can you address that, please?
Sure. What you're talking about is sustainability, which is a good thing, which is something that we want to still be able to function and to serve beyond the $7 million. And doing what you're suggesting would help toward that end. We would be building some type of reserve, some type of capital base, some capital stack that would help us to do things in the future. So if we look at this $7 million as sort of like a building block to bigger and better things, I think that's a really good idea. So if under your scenario, if we had a building that we wanted to sell and the proceeds of that building would go into an account that we would use to manage or to invest in the community, and then leverage that fund to help outside entities to contribute and all those kinds of things. That's a good thing. Yeah, I think that would. And then on top of that, the money that would be the proceeds from the sale would still be in the community. It'll continue to evolve in the community here. So that's where growth comes from. I mean, it would, as I mentioned before, we're in the process of building a mortgage program. And I'm really excited about how so many on this in this group, and also the straw poll that Kimberly has done. People are consistently talking about housing. That could go toward that end. Take money that you get from the sale of a building, deposit it into the credit union. The credit union turns around and use that money for a mortgage.
Exactly.
So that's a beautiful evolution there. That would really work well, I think.
And so what I'm saying is that if you have a vacant building, and a lot of people have told me that the URA has a lot of vacant buildings on their balance sheet. If we were able to get those and stop the demolition of vacant buildings on the hill that are not in such a bad shape that they're a threat to someone's safety, you get those. And I know that the URA can sell these buildings for whatever they want. Let's suppose we bought it for 10,000 and we were able to sell it for 150 and it cost 100 to renovate it. That's $50,000. It gets capitalized. It helps capitalize the credit union. Now we have money that we can put into the community in various forms of fashion, small business loans, things of that nature. So that's what I want to see. And I also want to see, and I want to make a motion that the application must be accompanied by a business plan and a community benefits analysis. A business plan and a community benefits analysis, because we need to understand if that business is sustainable, and we need the community is going to receive from that business. So, and I agree with Reverend Grayson about moving forward and perhaps looking at 1 year and 2 year, but we need to have a reoccurring revenue stream and sustain this fund. We can do a lot of good work. We just need to be smart about it.
So
Thank you, Reverend Grayson. And to be clear, the proper name for one of the kind of fund, the type of fund would be a revolving loan fund. Reverend Grayson?
it sounds like probably a great idea. I guess my question was, I'm not clear on capacity. So when we talk about the acquisition of a building, finding the different parties to renovate it, to resell it, that's a wonderful thought. But back to who would be, I'm not sure, I'm not clear who will be doing that process. And secondly, I concur that we do need some form of sustainability if we want to keep the dollars going. And I've always talked about, how could we hypothetically, over time, take $500,000 and invest it, and that over, let's say, over 2 or 3 years, and it may be it may come back at a 10-15% interest. So that's one form if we can make that happen. But I'm just not clear in terms of our capacity of how we make part 2 happen with our present schedule, unless we're going to create a system that can do that. That's what's not clear to me.
Okay, so to answer your question, that's part of the plan that we need to develop. How we're going to do that. Mr. Witherspoon has the expertise. The URA has the expertise in selecting contractors. Okay, so the pieces are on the table. The puzzle pieces are there. We just need to put it together. We're going to authorize. We're not going to do this work. We're going to come up with the form, the organization, the structure, if you may, and,
Gotcha.
and put this together. That's what we do. We put the structure together to make this work. I really want to capitalize the Hill District Federal Credit Union with the money so that he can reinvest it in the community. He has that expertise. We just need to be able to provide the capitalization, and by taking the vacant buildings, perhaps that the city owns and the URA owns, and getting contractors to renovate them and then selling them to people that are 80% AMI or less, things of that nature. And if somebody wants to come in and pay market value, then they can come in and pay market value. But the sale proceeds goes to the Hill District Credit Union. So we protect, we grow it, we capitalize the Hill District Federal Credit Union. It's a win-win-win all the way around. We have a application process that includes a business plan and a community benefits analysis so that we can see how this is going to benefit. And if anybody gives us questions, we can answer the questions, right? We have nothing. And this allocation is fine for a growth boundary, but we need to put together a plan. It's not that difficult. The pieces are there to put the plan together. And as we move forward and we get more experience and so forth, and as Reverend Grayson said, we can see what works and what doesn't work, then we can adjust. But the main thing we have to do is we have to have sustainability. We can't let all this money go in different places because yes, the individual may need help, but the benefit of the many outweighs the needs of the few. And that has to be understood. And yes, there's been a lot of work done, but that was 10 years ago, 2011, and maybe 5 years ago. But now we have certain things available that says we're losing residents. And people are saying, well, you know, choice. It's called no choice. So let's give people a choice to come back to the Hill, a reason to come back to the Hill. Let's give people a reason to come and do business on the Hill, to spend money on the Hill so that we can benefit and build wealth for the residents of the Hill District. That's what our plan needs to be.
Thank you, Arby. Are there any other comments? We want to be mindful of time. I know that Reverend Grayson has to log off shortly. Alicia has not had an opportunity to make any comment. And I believe that we have a representative from the county here as well. So Kim, and then if Alicia or Elaine have a comment, I'd like to hear from them.
Yeah, so so given the fact that we had experience on the Hill Growth Fund before being on this committee, I do know that Richard Witherspoon in the Hill District Federal Credit Union has the loan experience. But what I'm looking for is a person to who knows about the stock and investments and can actually stretch our money. I would like that to be somebody else because I think that there is expertise there that we absolutely need. And given that we didn't have it with the Hill Growth Fund, you know, I think that's obvious, like no offense to Richard Witherspoon, but I've seen expertise around the loans and things like that, but not around growth and strategizing and stretching the fund. We need that person. Secondly, I think that, sorry, having some of the funds there at the Hill District Federal Credit Union would be great. And I'm not against the revolving loan fund at all after we sort out with our Hill, you know, with our LERTA fund manager, what to do and how much we want to invest and so on and so forth. I think that's very important. So I'm right in between RB and Reverend Grayson. And then lastly, you know, I do want to remind everybody, especially because I'm a historian, that the URA does bear the primary responsibility for repairing and restoring our neighborhood. So we do need to make, you know, some concrete choices. We need to put some people in place and make sure that this can happen, because there's already a lot of people. We already know that there's an entire Hill diaspora that wants to return to the Hill. We know that some people have already gotten priced out, you know, of their other neighborhoods and things like that. So I'm all for the restoration. Obviously, I'm the Historic Hill Institute. So I'm all for the restoration of our buildings and bringing the housing back and building new housing as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from Alicia or Elaine before we move forward?
Thank you, Marimba. This is Alicia. I want to say I agree with basically a lot that has been said here today. I think the need at this point is for us to definitely move forward. In many ways, the feedback I've been getting is it feels like we're circling and continue to circle. If we can move forward with establishing the parameters for loans, or be they grants, if we can move forward with the ideas, I did like, you know, holding the money at the credit union and the revolving loan idea. But also, I want us to just kind of consider that depending on the times, as times are changing, the needs of people are changing as well. And for me, when I took a look at the straw poll and just shared it with a few people around me, housing and child and education initiatives were paramount. But we all know that we still need a grocery store. We need cleaners. We need a lot of stores that we just haven't had. With that said, I don't want to sound repetitive, but I'm still in favor of creating a subcommittee, and we've discussed this over the last two meetings, where all of these ideas are gathered, so that every time we come to this meeting, it is not presenting it all over again, but we actually are taking steps to move forward. And even the request of the URA, and a lot of requests have been made of Julie, and a lot of references that way. But these answers can come when we come to our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I 100% agree that some of this needs to be moved to committee in order for us to make progress. Elaine, would you like to make any comments before we move forward?
I would like to just echo, especially what Alicia had just said, and others' comments. I think I don't want to weigh in on any use of funds, as you know, I don't live in the Hill District, and therefore want to leave that obviously to residents, business owners, etc. in the Hill District. But I do want to, you know, also stress that it's so hard to find balance between, you know, care and concern and meeting the needs and wants of all involved, and balancing that with, okay, at what point do we make the difficult and practical decisions to move forward? And sometimes I think that we can look back to, since I'm a policy-driven person, look back at all of the agreements and legislation to say, okay, where can't we, what are we bound by legally? What are we bound by in the agreements? And where do we have movement? And I know that's like, duh, we all know these things, but sometimes I think to take that step backwards and look at rules and agreements we have in place and start again there, so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves, mired in the circle that others have spoken of, and I think Dr. Ellis did too, the circle that from which we can't escape, and we continue to labor over the obvious good deeds and just decisions we want to make, but then end up not making them because we're stuck. So where I can help in those areas, I would like to be of service. I keep looking back at the LRTA legislation and trying to really understand things in really good details so that I can participate in that kind of useful way. So that's what I would add. And yeah, I think there's really good, meaningful, obviously, discussion happening here, and that a lot of that is probably best left to a committee that can report out during these meetings. Sorry, that was longer than I wanted. And
That's
intended.
okay. That's okay. Are there any other comments? Because if not, I'd like to present a couple of motions for us to consider based on today's conversation. One is I would like to offer a motion to have the URA to identify and hire a fund manager to support the fund allocation decision-making process that we have before us, who can take the feedback of the committee and come back with a proposed structure that takes into consideration the feedback that's been provided. So I'd like to present that motion if there's an appetite for that at this stage so that we can move the process forward.
Could give me I would like clarification on what the description of fund manager would be. Would that be now the decision on who would receive funding comes from this body, correct?
Yes.
What would be the
Let me
function?
change the language to fund advisor, who can come back with an allocation to help us through the allocation decision-making process, taking into consideration all of the different perspectives and concerns that have been presented by the committee, which are sustainability, longevity of the fund, getting funding out, changing the allocation model that has been presented here, weighing that against our goal of sustainability, because I think that we have an inherent tension that we are not talking about explicitly, but is going to surface very shortly. And that is that if we end up giving out more grants, we will not have a sustainable fund, right? So those are inherently in tension with one another. That's okay. It's just that we should walk into that with both eyes open. So I think that a fund advisor can help us kind of walk through that in a more deliberate way and get us to an answer and a proposed structure. Reverend Grayson?
Yes, the only caveat for me would be hopefully that ideally in terms of wealth building, that wealth builder, a manager, kind of looks like represents the neighborhood ideally.
Okay.
I think that's-
So
I have
absolutely.
one question. So I understand the approach, but what I'm also looking at the composition of this board, and I think trying to hire somebody or write a job description and that type of thing is something that takes time, but I don't think we need somebody to tell us how to think.
No, that's not what I proposed.
Well,
Let me clarify.
Wait a minute, please. Okay. So what I'm saying is if we can put together a few committees amongst ourselves, we can come up with some things so that we can move forward. And I'm really not, I don't see how, I agree with Reverend Grace in regards to somebody that looks like us, that shares our values, should be that person. I agree. But also, on the other hand, I'm saying, well, that's going to take time. We don't have a plan. We need to put a plan together, and that is part of the plan. So, and spending money, when this board spends money, I want to be able to put my hand on a tangible result. That's one of the comments that I'm getting from, they ask questions about the growth fund. Well, what did it do What can you put your hand on? So those things should be in the consideration.
Can I,
Thank you,
can I,
Harvey.
can I, I don't think that the fund manager necessarily will be taking out of our pocket in their percentage. So we probably don't even have to pay them. We can solicit and recruit companies who have an interest, but in that they potentially will make a percentage if the fund grows. And so I think there's ways of, and then they bring an expertise that for transparency, I don't have in terms of, what's the latest, the best stock to buy, how long, if you're going to keep it for only 12 months versus, 10 years, what direction. So I think there are entities and companies who do that well. And it may be a dollar burden on us, but it may not be a dollar burden on us other than allowing them to invest it for us for sustainable return to this fund.
Thank you, Reverend Grayson. There is a motion on the table, so I'd like to go on ahead and see if I can get a second. I'm going to reread the motion and clarify one specific point. Motion to have the URA find to hire or to find a pro bono fund advisor to support the fund allocation process that the advisory committee is currently going through. Is anyone willing to second that motion?
I'm willing to second, just with a slight amendment, which would be, pro bono or low cost. Because
Yes.
it's worth it for us to get somebody good and to get this advice. And it is expertise that none of us have.
Can I
just, instead of low cost, we need to probably put some parameters around that, because if we want expertise, it's going to cost, and we can't be certain that so I just want to be sure that, that how we define that is clear.
Well, okay. So let me make the slight amendment that let's not put any parameters on who they find. Let's put out that we're looking for fund advisors, and that we are looking for anywhere from pro bono to market rate, and just see what we get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So can I interject one more time? Remember, will you allow, since you are chairing, will you allow me to make the motion you articulated just for the, and then let Kim second it, if that's okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Reverend.
All right, thank you. So
That was what I was going to say. Thanks.
Yeah, made by Reverend Grayson, second by Kim, and now you can carry it, Marimba.
Would you like me to reread it now?
Can you restate it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the motion is to have the URA to identify or find a pro bono or fund advisor for fee to support the advisory committee's fund allocation process.
Question on the motion. Is that limited to, let's say that there are members of the board here that are aware of someone that could potentially fill that role? Or are we just limited to what the URA comes up with?
I think that we should all get our recommendations to the URA, and I think that in the interest of managing conflicts, that none of us should serve in that role.
Okay, so it would be funneled through the URA.
So I think
you can send it to the whole committee if you like. You can send it to the co-chairs. You can send it to the URA staff. I think the important thing is to get it submitted.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I jump in with a comment and question?
Question on the motion.
One consideration within, I don't know how it might affect the motion in of itself, but I don't know about the URA guidelines, but with the county, we would also be bound by our own procurement guidelines. So I don't know how those might affect how the URA goes forward with bidding and selecting fund advisors for this. So that is something to keep in mind. I know with us, with the county, we're bound by like the lowest responsive and responsible bidder that also meet the parameters of what we seek. So that's something to consider as far as the cost.
Noted. Thank you, Elaine. We'll be sure to make sure that the URA does research on that in partnership with the county if necessary. We have a second on the motion. I'd like to call this to a vote.
I would like to amend the motion that whatever the URA that's presented to the advisory board, and the advisory board makes the determination. I want that to be clear language in the motion.
No question.
Reverend Grayson, you're amending the motion as such.
I took that for granted, but I'm glad it was articulated. So yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to call this to vote. All in favor?
So,
Aye.
Against?
can you read it so that everybody knows exactly what we're talking about? Because we've had some discussion, please.
Actually, I'm going to leave that to the minutes because I don't want to get any confusion. I think that and we're in the middle of voting. Is there anyone abstaining? Okay, that motion is approved. Just to clarify for the record, the intent of that vote and what was approved was that the URA has been charged to bring back before the advisory committee a pro bono and or other potential fund advisors to support our process in making decisions relative to the fund allocation program. Okay, and the exact language will be more clearly articulated, I'm sure, when they have a chance to review the video. All right, so I think that that's good progress. I think that once we get through that process, we will be in a better position to move forward on actual applications. But I'd like to revisit that topic because I think that's unclear, and I know that the URA is probably going to bring that question back before us. So do we want to move through this process before we release applications? Because obviously there's some information that's missing right now for us to make the decision of how much are we willing to give out in grants, how much are we not willing to, put in a loan fund or revolving loan fund. There are still some big questions for us to be releasing an application, but that is obviously the pleasure of this committee. So I present that back to this committee to make that decision as to whether or not we want to go through this, want to go through this kind of discussion with a fund advisor before we move to an open application.
Well, before we start putting applications out, we definitely need to have policies and procedures in place. I mean,
right.
We have to be able to, know where we are in terms of the request, So, yeah, we definitely have to get our policies and procedures solidified before we can put it out there that we're accepting applications.
So I know we've been trying to skirt, I guess, subcommittees, but it's evident that somehow a committee or two needs to be formed. And I don't have to be this second, but we can, indicate what time to kind of work out some of the details to bring back to the body. Because if not, it may save, it may get us there faster in terms of, without that, I'm conservatively thinking May, but if there's a committee or two who could come together in the interim, our next meeting, we could deal with those various policies issues, percentage issues, what's missing issues, and then vote on it by the next meeting. We might be ready, by April versus further down the road. I just don't think with all of our passion and questions and thoughts and the intricacies of this that we can get there without trusting some level of a subgroup to kind of work through some of this and bring it back to the body for approval.
Agreed and noted, Reverend Grayson. Alicia, and then we're going to, I know Reverend Grayson has to log off shortly, so I want to try to get any final votes in prior to his departure. Alicia, did you have any final comments?
Yes, Reverend Grayson just kind of hit on what I was going to say again. But at the same time, to my knowledge, we still have to agree on what type of application, the questions on the application. And I think definitely we should have an advisor with us before we actually put out that application. As you know, I'm in favor of us doing this subcommittee. So next time we come together, we will have some parameters and things set, and we can really vote on it. But I think but to my knowledge, unless I missed something here, we're still in the phase of determining what will be on that application. We did receive a draft, but we found where we needed a few more items placed there, some items taken off. And I think we need to agree on that very quickly.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. And I'm
sure.
sorry, I'm gonna have to jump off as well in a little bit for
Understood.
operations sake. Thank you. I'll be here as long as I can.
Alrighty, thank you. So to be clear, because we are going to move to wrap up, but to be clear, the subcommittees that I know have been discussed to some degree or hinted at during this meeting and or prior meetings are a subcommittee to focus on the application. There's been discussion around a subcommittee to focus on the allocation plan. Today I heard a subcommittee to focus on specifically the revolving loan fund concept. So I think that there are several concepts that need to be thought through. I asked the committee to take those 3 down and to think about if they think that those are the right ways to break out subcommittees, or if we can cluster some of that work, and who from this broader group should possibly be added to that effort. With that said, I would like to move to old business here.
Before you move to old business,
hold on, RB, hold on, because you'll be able to bring up under old business if there are other items anyone would like to bring to the table. So with that, I'm going to call on Kim and then RB for any additional items, and then we are going to close. Thank you.
Yeah, can the URA send out the application again? Because I need to look at that. And then can we, because I actually don't think that, I do think we need to have certain things in place, but I actually don't think that we need to wait on just getting applications in. I don't think that we need to have like our investment strategy completely set and even our percentages settled. I think that that can actually come a little bit later. I think we should at least put the applications out so that once what Alicia just said is sorted, right? I think that we could do that because then that gives people, it's going to take time for people to like look over things, get their ideas in order, and then to actually apply. And in between that time, we will be sorting out the percentages as well as what the fund advisor gives us in terms of advice. And we already know we're not going to give out a single dollar before we determine what those percentages are and what our strategy is. But I do think that if we could do 2 things at once, we can have literally a batch of applications that have nothing to do with, the allocation. These are applications that abide by our the subject matter that was on the form, like, because we all agree on that. We like every last one of us agrees on that. So we can have them just check a box, like which one does this fit? Is it child and youth initiatives? Is it housing, et cetera, et cetera? And then the second thing is I'm willing to be on a subcommittee, but I just think in general, we need an audit. I brought this up last time. We need an audit of what we already have in the Hill District. I recognize the URA sent the three or 4 programs that they already have, and we need to do that with everything, with every category that is in that list. We need to do that and begin with government programs because no taxation without representation. So I just wanted to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. RB?
yes, I would like to put forth a motion that Kim, Mr. Witherspoon, and myself form a committee, and let's take the cluster, as you categorize it, of things together and see what we can come up with between now and the next meeting to present to the committee so that we can move forward.
That's
I just-
fine.
No, and I just don't, I don't know how I think we should send out, I think that the two chairs should lay out a committee or two and ask the rest of the committee to see if they have the time to serve on any of those subcommittees. To say, take 3 people and let them make the committee, I don't think is a equitable procedure of going forward. I think that we know kind of what areas, whether it's policy or tweaking, and lay out 3 committees and then ask people to serve on 1 or 2 of those committees as soon as possible. That would be my recommendation. I just don't think it's proper procedure to list 3 people when there are others who are willing to serve in some.
Well, here's the thing. Anybody can serve on any committee they want. There's no exclusion. But
You
in
just-
essence of time, that's what I propose. So if you want,
You just excluded. You just
well,
you just
my apologies. My
you-
apologies.
okay.
My apologies.
Thank
So
you.
let me amend my motion. A motion to create a committee that any board member can participate on to take the cluster of things that we've discussed and try to put it in some organized fashion of a plan so that we can move forward at the next meeting.
I can second that motion.
Are there any questions? If not, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Any persons? Anyone abstaining? All right, that motion is approved.
And can I make a motion? Yes, yes. So I just would like to make the motion that all of the committee members and their respective institutions will send out the straw poll to get more and current feedback. And we can add that to what the fund advisor will have to look at, and also for ourselves, especially given the time frame that the last community process was enacted. So it's with respect to the community process that the categories stay the same and things like that. And then it doesn't hurt to get the continuation of the straw poll. So my motion is that I would like for all of the committee members to send out the straw poll far and wide, to their respective distribution lists and on social media.
I don't know if that needs to be a motion, Kim. I consider that as part of our commitment to getting feedback as this group from the committee. I just think we need more of a commitment or a second effort to get it done. If we could just commit to that, I don't know if it needs to be a formal motion.
I don't think that you can get just to be clear, I don't think you can force individual organizations, to be clear, to send out something. I think that that's more of a request to each individual committee member.
Well,
But
if I may,
if you want to present it in the form of a motion, that's fine. If someone wants to second it, we can vote it. But I think that's more of a request, not an actual motion.
I would have a conflict in some ways, sending it out as the organization, but as executive director to our participants, I can include them in that.
Yeah, I mean, however it's done.
Yeah, and I can get better results that way, Kim, that's all.
Yeah, I respect that.
Okay, all righty. So Kim, are you withdrawing your motion?
No. I'm still putting a motion out, and I'm just saying that however the committee members find it best to disseminate, but just to do it however they see best, so that we can get more participants. Like ideally, I would love, just for percentage wise, like I would love to bare minimum get 100 participants, and I would love ideally to get 1,000 participants. So, and I think that it's possible. It's, it doesn't take that long to fill out the poll. And certainly if Daniel Lavelle sends it out to our ward, through the city, or just, I don't know. And then if you send it out to the Hill CDC, if RB resends, that's all. And how Alicia said, she can send it. That's all. I do think that it should be a formal motion though.
Okay, is anyone seconding that motion?
I second it.
Okay, a question for me, and just more or less a note that I think that procedurally that things of that nature should go through the actual advisory committee as opposed to, an individual party doing a straw poll. So I think just procedurally, I have a concern about the way that was executed. With that said, if there are no other comments or questions, we can call that to.
In terms of when the straw poll is sent back, in terms of making sure it's not duplicated, because we all know some of the same people, a name would have to go, so 10 of us couldn't ask George Smith to do the poll. So
Yeah.
just to,
It's
we would
protected. It's protected.
then that's
Right.
fine.
Yeah. No, you can't twice.
So I guess the word is we strongly encourage the board to send out the straw poll as opposed to a mandate, because ethically you may be so let's just use, can I amend the word that we encourage all board members to send out the straw poll?
Sure. I'd like to amend my motion that we strongly encourage board members to send out the straw poll. It is protected. You cannot vote twice. And it is patterned directly after the form that was submitted to us by Marimba and Felicity and the Hill CDC at the last meeting.
So good. So cool. Thanks.
Okay.
Ready for questions?
Who's RB is seconding, or RB, you're seconding that motion?
Yes, I'm seconding the amended motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, I am abstaining. Are there any additional items that
I have
we
to
need to
abstain,
cover?
Marimba,
Okay,
but I strongly support the straw poll.
okay.
Understood. Thank you.
Again, mine is on the basis of, just procedure. If we're gonna do things like that, I think it should come through the committee, and I think it's important to note that. With that said, are there any additional items under other business? If not, we are ready to adjourn the meeting.
Move for adjournment.
All right. And I will entertain a second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, the third meeting of the Reinvestment Fund is adjourned, and we will be in touch with the next meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Wait. We
Thank you, everyone.
we got a committee going. We don't have people on the subcommittee.
We'll have to do that offline, RB. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right.